So, good evening to all. Uh, we have just 1 minute. Within 1 minute, our speaker will join, and after that, we'll start the session. As it is time now, 7 p.m. Hello, Jay, are you there?
Yes,
Okay, shall we start with introduction of our literary forum, and after that, we can proceed with
yeah,
the
it's already seven
speaker?
past one, so we should begin with our procedure.
Okay.
Yeah,
Uh, very good evening to all. First of all are welcome and greetings. Before the commencement of our main lecture, I would like to introduce our literary forum, which is the Scholarly Chronicle Literary Forum. Basically, this forum is an exquisite academic forum which promotes literary discussion, discourse, talk, and other literary activities. The primary motive of this platform is to reach scholarly minds and share essential knowledge and information from different sources. Especially, the core area is English literature, and area is humanities and languages. So, with these objectives, we have started a series called the Scholarly Talk series, and we have had already three lectures from different speakers. The current lecture is lecture number 4 on the topic Aurobindo and India. So today we have with us Dr. Bimlesh Kumar Singh sir. He is associate professor and head in the Department of English at Mahatma Gandhi Central University. So we will be listening to him. So before going to his talk, I would like to invite Mr. Jay Kumar to introduce our prominent speaker, Dr. Bimlesh Kumar sir. Please, Jay.
yeah. Thank you, Tapas. So today, I first of all I welcome you all to this lecture number four of the Scholarly Talk series. So today our topic is Aurobindo and India. So we are all aware that the 151st birth anniversary of Sri Aurobindo is on 15th August 2023. So prior to that, we are here and we will listen to our honorable uh, speaker of today, Dr. Bimlesh Kumar Singh, about the dynamic personality and how relevant and how we will revisit Aurobindo and his philosophy and how relevant Aurobindo is today's time. So our speaker for today is Dr. Bimlesh Kumar Singh. First of all, I would like to welcome him to our lecture series. So, sir, a very warm welcome from all of us to you. Thank you for coming to this platform. Before we start to listen to our speaker, so I would like to introduce a short introduction of our speaker. Our speaker is Dr. Bimlesh Kumar Singh. He is Associate Professor and Head, Department of English, Mahatma Gandhi Central University. uh, Prior to Mahatma Gandhi Central University, he has uh, given his service as an assistant professor and also associate professor in Chhotu Ram Arya College, Sonipat, which is under Maharishi Dayanand University, Rohtak, Haryana. Beside being a prolific professor and as he called himself a ardent student of literature, he is keenly interested in research innovation in education. Uh, he has supervised one PhD thesis, and right now six students are under his supervision doing PhDs, and he has also supervised more than 50 M.Phil dissertations and examined two PhD theses and conducted four PhD pre-submission viva voice as different universities around the country. Apart from that, he is a prolific speaker invited at different national international forums and conferences to deliver his lectures and also chaired several sessions at international and national conferences. Apart from this, he has also been research supervisors or research advisory committees, members of research advisory committees at different universities of India. So, with this, I would like to welcome our Reverend Speaker of today's session, Dr. Bimlesh Kumar Singh, and welcome, sir. The stage is all yours, sir.
Yes.
Thank you, Jay. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. You are audible, sir.
Thank you. First of all, namaste to all of you. And I express my heartiest felicitation to my dear scholars who are organizing this scholarly chronicle and for giving me this golden opportunity to share uh, some kind of views about India to which we belong by blood and spirit. And I also welcome my lovely audience, whom I could see virtually, that they have joined this evening to be part of this session. Well, first of all, I would like to make it clear why I have chosen this topic. When we talk about Sri Aurobindo, we have many aspects of Sri Aurobindo as a philosopher, as a political thinker, as a poet, as a mystic, and above all, a great man, and I would call him Superman. Now, why did I wanted to focus my lecture on Aurobindo and Bharat? This is the topic of today because I think that in the tradition of Walt Whitman, Max Muller, Sir William Jones, Professor A.L. Bessam, and of course Swami Vivekananda, Sri Aurobindo, and what thousands of people who have written about India. So I think no because if we remember Walt Whitman, American poet, who wrote a great poem, Passage to India, and which inspired the great novelist E.M. Forster to write a novel in 1924, A Passage to India. So we find India has been a land of attraction and inspiration for artists and philosophers throughout the world. I remember when great German philosopher Max Muller studied Abhigyan Sakuntalam by Kalidas, he started feeling such a great ecstasy that he started even requesting the rickshaw puller in Delhi and the beggars in Delhi and said, start reading Abhigyan Sakuntalam. And the German philosopher Goethe, who said, in Sakuntala of Abhigyan Sakuntalam, there is a marriage of heaven and earth. So, this is quite natural for a sensible individual like me and my audience to speak about such a important topic, that is Bharat. So, uh, Aurobindo, he was a genius. He was a brilliant student and a great, scholar. But then, if you remember Subhash Chandra Bose and V.D. Savarkar and also Lal Bal Pal, you realize that Aurobindo gave importance, primary importance, to what is called national consciousness and what is called a spiritual consciousness above serving as a civil servant of India. So, Aurobindo, after getting education, higher education abroad and in India, he didn't get himself fulfilled. Rather, like a true son of Mother India, he wanted to devote his all to make India a great country, a great nation. Because if you remember Swami Vivekananda's great speech in Chicago Parliament of Religion in 1893, where he talks about the great heritage of India and what India stood for. For Vivekananda, India stood for a universal nursery for the oppressed people, for the saints, for the philosophers. And Vivekananda said, just as all the rivers finally merge with the ocean, so different religions of the world meet with the same divinity, the same spiritual consciousness finally. In Vivekananda's talk about India, we find there is universal brotherhood, there is universal toleration and tolerance, what our constitution makers have talked about. But India has already been a land of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, a land of a spiritual illumination. And I was reading a Hindi poet who defined India as Bharat and says Bharat means Bha plus Rat. Bha means Prakash. Rat means आच्छादित लीन. जो धरती प्रकाश में लीन है, that land is called Bharata. That land is called Bharatvarsha. Lord Krishna has already spoken lot about Bharatvarsha in Mahabharata when he was giving preaching to Arjuna. So, dear audience, when we talk about Aurobindo and his concept of Bharat, we find that he is talking to tell us that India is not a geography. India is not only a history, rather, India is a mystery. Rather, India is a spiritual illumination. India is a land of wisdom. India has stood for humanity. So, in Aurobindo's vision of India, we find humanity and liberation quite synonymous, quite different aspects of the same name. And uh, if you remember Aurobindo's whole life, cycle, Aurobindo was an active revolutionary, and he always participated in freedom movement. He left his job, he left his personal pursuits to make Mother India free. And the greatest influence on Sri Aurobindo is found historically in the great novel Anand Math, the Abbey of Bliss, that is its English translation. And this novel, you know, that it was written by Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay. So, uh, Anand Math has a tremendous influence on the revolutionary, on the patriot, on the philosopher Aurobindo. And Aurobindo also translated Anand Math into English. And he was so influenced by the book that uh, he said that the Mother India, which is in shackle British slavery, must be freed from the British colony. And he said, just talking about the great book, and he wrote about Rishi Bankim Chandra. I quote, "It was 30 years ago that Bankim wrote his great song and few listened. But in a sudden moment of awakening from long delusion, the people of Bengal looked around for the truth, and in a fated moment, somebody sang Bande Matram. The Matram had been given, and in a single day, whole people had been converted to the religion of patriotism. The mother had revealed herself." Unquote. So, what I mean to tell you that Anand Math is a kind of, you know, fire. It is a kind of, you know, revolutionary blast in the sleeping domain of the time. This novel was a kind of uh, mountain being thrown in the calm ocean of the mind of Indians, you know. So, how Bankim Chandra he defines India, he reveres Mother India, and for Bankim Chandra, India is not a country of the timid people. India does not stand for a geographical piece of land, and it is not a nation that is, you know, defined and limited by geography and history alone. Rather, India is a land of great mythology, great civilization, great culture. And if you remember the Urdu poet Muhammad Iqbal, who, you know, wrote a great national song, Sare Jahan Se Acha Hindustan Hamara. And when his song was not accepted as the national anthem, you know, even national song, he left India. But when he was asked what you understand about Indian culture, Iqbal was comparing Indian culture with the great civilization of Rome and, you know, Yunnan, and he said classically, यूनान मिस्र रोमा सब मिट गए जहां से बाकी मगर है अब तक नामो निशां हमारा कुछ बात है कि हस्ती मिटती नहीं हमारी सदियों रहा है दुश्मन दौरे जहां हमारा. So what Iqbal wanted to highlight, dear audience, that India has something that survives. India has something, and that is spiritualism. India has something that is called moral and philosophical heritage. So India does not live by what is called scientific, what is called material only. Rather, India is a land of spiritual illumination and visionary insights. So, again, when Bankim Chandra in his translation talks about the great character of Satyanand in the Anand Math, he writes, tears flowed from both of Satyanand's eyes, turning towards the image of Mother India placed on high. He began saying in tear-choked voice with joined palms, Alas, mother, I have failed to rescue you. You will again fall into the clutches of the Malechhaj, that is non-Aryan, that is Britishers. Do condone the failing of your child. Alas, mother, why did I not die in the battlefield today? Unquote. So, what is important that Anand Math, which was written as a response to the sannyasi rebellion against the Britishers, because Britishers uh, believed in divide and rule politics. Britishers, he just banned the visit of religious sites by rishis, by saints, by holy people, because the Britishers feared that Indians are basically God fearing people, and through sannyasi, through a spiritual giants, these common people can be awakened and they can fight out the Britishers from the land. So, this Anand Matha had great influence on the shaping of the revolutionary personality of Sri Aurobindo. When I talk about Sri Aurobindo as a political thinker, I also remember that Aurobindo did not believe in limited, freedom. Like Bal Gangadhar Tilak, he didn't talk about Swaraj only. Like Bipin Chandra Pal, he didn't talk about a kind of autonomy or legal autonomy only. Rather, for Aurobindo, independence, freedom of all kinds is the condition for a blessed life. So Aurobindo talks about complete freedom. And I remember the great French philosopher Rousseau, who whose classic social contract begins, I quote, man is born free, yet he is everywhere in chains, unquote. So what Rousseau, Voltaire did against the tyrannical rule of Louis XIV in France, which inspired the English Romantics to create great poems and great classics, I find Aurobindo being inspired by Anand Math and the great freedom fighters. He wanted to continue inspiring the masses, the Indian common people, to fight out the Britishers. Because for Aurobindo, freedom is the only beginning for the all-round development of a country. And when we read Aurobindo and his concept of India, Aurobindo says India as a nation is something that is combination of bhakti and shakti, and Ma Bhavani, that is Mother India, that is God, that is goddess personified. For Aurobindo, India is not a country that stands for the weak or the oppressed or the marginalized only. Rather, India is a symbol of the great people. It stands for heroic, brave, and a spiritual adventure. So, Aurobindo says India as a nation is something that has historical, metaphysical and a spiritual entity. So those historians who want to study India as a historical entity, as a political entity, will definitely, I think, fail to appreciate India proper. So I suggest all the critics and historians to redefine India and to understand the beauty and bounty of India that has been her spiritual heritage. Now, uh, Aurobindo, when he was arrested for his protest against the Bengal division of 1905, if you remember, Bang Bhang Andolan, Aurobindo was so much injured by Lord Curzon's decision of dividing Bengal into two parts that he started protesting. He just cooperated and he participated tooth and nail with Lal Bal Pal and all the revolutionaries of the time, and he was arrested and put into Alipur jail. Now, in Alipur jail, I find that jail was a kind of transformation for Aurobindo. And this is my conviction that in misfortune and in jail, we have great writers. If you remember, the Italian philosopher Gramsci, Antonio Gramsci, when he was put to jail by the so-called tyrannical rulers of the time, in jail he was able to write his prison notebooks. And from prison notebooks, we have got such great philosophy of hegemony. If you remember, V.D. Savarkar, the great Indian patriot, and when he was put to cellular jail in Andaman Nicobar, he was, convicted and he was imprisoned for 50 years. And in his stay in the jail for such a prime time, he was able to produce an immortal work, India's first war of independence. Right? If you remember Jawaharlal Nehru, he wrote great book Discovery of India and autobiography in jail. So what I find, jails right from the beginning of human creation, jails are very important platform for transforming and igniting the mind of the genius. You know, when Krishna was born, he was also born in jail. And when he was born, all the fetters were broken. So jail is, I think, a welcome place for the rise of great genius for the liberation of mankind. So in Alipur jail, Aurobindo had a kind of transforming experience. He had Vasudhaiv in his vision, and he had a vision of India who was just shackled, who was bridled, and Vasudhaiv just inspired him to make India free. So this kind of experience at Alipur jail, it transformed Aurobindo, and when he came out, you know, he left active politics, and after that we find new Aurobindo, and his vision of India arises from him in a new way. I remember the French philosopher Roma Rolla, who is known for writing Life of Swami Vivekananda and Life of Ramakrishna, and he has written great books on Indian culture. When Tagore was given Nobel Prize for Gitanjali, Roma Rolla met him and he started congratulating him and told Tagore that, "Oh Tagore, you have written such a great work, you represent India." Tagore replied my dear Roma Rola, if you want to know India, study Vivekananda, because in Vivekananda nothing is negative, everything is positive. And I think if we want to know India, we should also study a great philosopher, that is Sri Aurobindo. Because Sri Aurobindo talks about a kind of synthesis. He talks about a kind of harmony. I congratulate the Harmony team present today who are publishing bi-monthly newsletter of Mahatma Gandhi Central University entitled Harmony. So this harmony of material and spiritual, the harmony where there is no room for fanatics and bigots and fundamentalists. Now, for today's people who confuse religion with fundamentalism, who confuse religion with a kind of fanaticism, I just request them to study Sri Aurobindo, because in Aurobindo's philosophy of Bharata and India, there is no room for fanaticism. There is no room for fundamentalism. There is no room for communalism, I tell you. Because Aurobindo wanted to just make India free along with millions of freedom fighters. And do you know that Britishers left India only because of the higher and fire kind of politics? I think it was the mass awakening that was important for the freedom of India. And uh, if you remember Mahatma Gandhi and the great novelist Premchand, uh, they also talked about it, that through truth and non-violence, we can fill up all the jails of India with satyagrahi, with the freedom fighters, and a day will come when Britishers will be tired of the number of people in the jail and they will give freedom to India. So, what I find that Aurobindo left active politics and he went to Pondicherry and he established his Pondicherry ashram. But in ashram, he did not stay ideal. He didn't stay silent. Rather, from his great spiritual illumination, we have a reborn Aurobindo, a Aurobindo who talks about the great culture and civilization and the great values. And we have great works by Sri Aurobindo, like the life divine, the synthesis of yoga, the idea of human unity, and Savitri. So, what I mean to share, that in Pondicherry ashram, Aurobindo just lived like a recluse. He lived like a saint. But you know how saint can transform the suffering masses into workforce. By saint, I mean not the people who are escapist. By saint, I mean the people, the great soul who live for human values, who live for humanity, and the people who did not establish their grihast ashram, rather they shunned grihast ashram for larger mission and vision of life. So in Aurobindo, we find a great sadhak, a great philosopher, a great visionary who is trying to tell the world about a great culture, about a great reality for the people of the time. So, uh, when Aurobindo came to know that India got independence in 1947, as we know, on 15th of August, and Aurobindo became very happy, and he just congratulated all the countrymen. He did not congratulate the countrymen like the first Prime Minister of India. Rather, when he started addressing the people of India, he spoke like a dreamer, like a visionary, and he told the people that we have got independence from British rule, but now our job has begun. We have to fulfill our great dreams. And dear audience, on the uh, freedom of India, Aurobindo just talked about five dreams. The first dream that Aurobindo talked about is freedom of India and Akhand Bharat. So, for Aurobindo, India's independence is the beginning of world unity. For Aurobindo, if India is safe, if India is free, the whole world will get a kind of a spiritual illumination from India. Because India is a country, if you remember Vivekananda's speech, India did not attack any country of the world. Rather, all the countries of the world, whenever time came, they invaded, they eroded Indian culture. But India always loved them, India embraced them. So, Aurobindo talks about that India should remain undivided. It is ironical that in 1947, uh, Hindustan was divided, it was partitioned on the basis of communal basis into Bharat and Pakistan. That Aurobindo didn't like. If you remember the great past of India, during Chandragupta's time, India's expansion, it was up to Afghanistan and the different neighboring countries of India like Afghanistan, Pakistan, Burma, Tibet, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and many more. All these countries constituted the great India of that time. So Aurobindo had a vision that India should remain akhanda, undivided, because if India is undivided, it will contribute to make the humanity undivided. It was Aurobindo's, vision about humanity. The second dream that Aurobindo had about India, the rise of Asia on the world stage. Aurobindo thought that when India got independence, India, along with other countries of Asia, will definitely lead the world towards establishing a universal brotherhood, a kind of world culture. Now, today, if you talk about diaspora and if you talk about migration and displacement, of course, after Corona in post-pandemic world, we have seen that the migration has been converted into reverse migration. But then, if you look at the world scenario, you find wherever Indians have gone, they have contributed to the development of science and technology, to the development of art and culture, and they are trying to make the whole world a better place to live. What Aurobindo thought. And the result is even today in England, the Prime Minister is from Indian origin. Even in America, we have people of India sitting on a high pedestal. So, Aurobindo had great vision of India. In the third dream, Aurobindo talks about world unity. And here, Aurobindo come close to Rabindranath Tagore, Swami Vivekananda, because if you remember Tagore and his concept of nation, and Mahatma Gandhi also talks about world citizenship. I'm happy that government of India has introduced new education policy 2020, and in this policy there is a talk about the world citizenship and global education. So that is what India can teach the world. If you remember the great book by Max Muller, India and what can it teach to the world. So Aurobindo talks about world unity in the way Tagore talks about. In the fourth dream, Aurobindo talks about a spread of Vedanta philosophy. And you know, Vedas are so important that even Dayanand Saraswati, who established Arya Samaj, he called upon the people to return to Vedas, and he wrote the great book Satyarth Prakash. Even today, if you remember the German philosopher, American philosopher like Emerson, Thoreau, Walt Whitman, they are talking about Vedas and Upanishad. Here I remember when gramophone was invented by Thomas Alva Edison, he wanted to speak the most holy word of the world. He contacted Max Muller, and Max Muller said that the holiest word of the world is the first mantra of Rig Ved, Agnim Ire Purohitam, where the Rishi talks about the higher worship, Agni Dev ki puja. And you know, Thomas Alva Edison, the great British scientist, he spoke the first word from gramophone, that is Agni Mire Purohitam. So, what Aurobindo said, Vedanta philosophy, about which Radha Krishnan already talked about in religion and culture, in Indian philosophy, and Vivekananda told the whole world about Vedanta, about Upanishad, about Mahabharata, and the fifth dream which Aurobindo had on the eve of India's freedom, evolution of mankind to a higher consciousness. That is, according to Aurobindo, human life is a golden opportunity where we can just develop our consciousness towards the ultimate, towards the supreme. And if you remember the layers of consciousness, Aurobindo talks about the different layers of human mind. He begins from, uh, an illumined mind, and he ends up with the supramental consciousness. Now, if you remember Sigmund Freud, the great psychoanalyst, who talks about conscious, subconscious, and unconscious. But while reading Freud, we don't have the feel of transcendence. It is something like the German philosopher Immanuel Kant. If you remember him, the critique of pure reason, in that book he talks about the postulates of morality, and there he talks about independence of self, and he talks about categorical imperative. He talks about morality as the supreme principle of life. So in Aurobindo, quite different from Sigmund Freud, I find the expansion of human consciousness towards divinity, towards ultimate, towards a state of bliss. And that is the beauty of Oriental wisdom, I tell you. If you remember Lord Buddha, he was able to transform the suffering of mankind into nirvana by eightfold path, by Ashtanga Marga. In nirvana, we have the moment of bliss. There is a divinization of humanity, and this is a moment where we are just bodiless. This is a kind of ecstasy, and we have also experienced while reading William Blake and William Wordsworth that how they talk about a bodilessness, a kind of ecstasy. So Aurobindo, and it is very important to remember that the Pondicherry ashram which Aurobindo established, this is not meant for a group of people. In this ashrama, Muslims, Christians, Jews, and people from different parts of world joined Aurobindo in a spiritual meditation. So there is no boundary, I tell you. I love the institution which brings about the working together of people from different caste, different race, different religion. And here I am against the so-called politicians of today, because politicians, they believe in divide and rule policy. But I worship Aurobindo, I worship Vivekananda, I worship Tagore, because their concept of Bharat is all inclusive. This concept is something that enlightens us, that liberates us, that gives India a pride of place among the people of the world. And India becomes a spiritual guide, friend, and philosopher to all the people. So, when we read Aurobindo, his concept of India and Bharat, it is something uh, enlightening, it is something dynamic, it is something modern, it is not conservative, it is not something that is traditional. India stands for a power, India stands for a kind of consciousness that will definitely guide the whole humanity. And I tell you one thing, that Aurobindo always tried to uh, give a kind of message to all the people of the world, and he said it was his clarion call. He said, I quote, whether in a cat or dog or man, there is no difference there between a cat or a man. This idea of difference in a human conception for man's own advantage, unquote. So what Aurobindo said, that mysticism, we have this kind of privilege among Indian philosophers of the ancient. There was no division. Religion of India and religion of the world can never be divisive. I think it is for the divisive nature of religion, or what is called fundamentalism, that Karl Marx said religion is the opium of life. But when religion becomes a force of human unity, when religion becomes a force of mystic comprehension of divinity in all creatures, religion become a kind of panacea, religion become a kind of guide and friend to mankind. So, in Aurobindo and his concept of Bharata, we find there is something like a spiritually enlightening, his vision of politics, his vision of literature, his vision of a nation is something dynamic. It is evolving, because human consciousness is something evolving. And in the evolution of human consciousness, India will play a vital role. India will contribute not only through science and technology, not only through yoga. You know, Aurobindo gave supreme importance to yoga. That is, he also wrote a great book, The Synthesis of Yoga. And I'm very happy that on 20, I think 21st June, I think if I'm not wrong, 21st June, I think, 21 June, the International Yoga Day is celebrated. So, this is very welcome sign that UNO has declared 21st June as International Yoga Day. So this is one of the greatest contributions of India to world culture. And all the, countries of the world, they are just looking towards India. If you talk about environment, if you talk about art, if you talk about culture, we find there is a resurgent India, there is a reborn India, there is reviving India. And And Aurobindo, like Tagore and Vivekananda, they have done a great job in revitalizing, in re-illuminating, and in revisiting India. And that is the beauty of Aurobindo's vision of life. So, what I want to share with my audience that when we read Aurobindo, Aurobindo gives us new sight, new insight, and new vision of India that is synthetic, that is synchronization, that is philosophical, that is full of philanthropy, that is full of a spiritual wisdom, and this is how, by the use of art, literature, philosophy, and politics, we can contribute our best towards liberation of mankind. And I think this is the business of art, politics, literature, and every human endeavor. So, on the birth anniversary of Sri Aurobindo, that is 15th of August, we are going to celebrate 151st birth anniversary of Sri Aurobindo, and everybody present today in the meeting must uh, fix a kind of vision and mission that India stands for a kind of supramental consciousness. India stands for a kind of a spiritual wisdom. India stands for a kind of world as a family kind of feeling, and there will be no room for the caste, creed, color, sex, and any ism in the emerging world order which Aurobindo envisioned in his philosophy. And that will be the real tribute, the real reverence to the great Indian mystic, philosopher, poet, and political thinker, Sri Aurobindo. So, with these words, I want to congratulate all my lovely audience on the upcoming 151st birth anniversary of Sri Aurobindo, whose philosophy has every possibility of reviving, of revitalizing, of immortalizing, and of reverberating and echoing the great wisdom of our past that has great role to play in the present time. So, with these words, I once again express my thanks to all the office bearers and to the the erudite you know organizing team of a scholarly talk, that is a scholarly chronicle. So, thank you very much. Namaste.
Okay, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. It was really a wonderful talk, and it was quite enlightening, and it was quite heartening to revisit the philosophy of Aurobindo in present times. Sir, in your lecture, you have quite beautifully and quite grandly has covered all the aspects of Aurobindo's philosophy and his personality and his lives, whether as a revolutionarist or as a nationalist, as a philosopher, as a yogic, or as a thinker and as an Indian on the top of it. So, as you had also said about the vision, five visions of Aurobindo, and as we are celebrating the 151st anniversary, birth anniversary of Aurobindo, so it is quite an apt time to consider or revisit the five dreams of Aurobindo, whether we have achieved those five dreams or not. So it is quite a wonderful reawakening from your sides. So I hope, as you had talked about the nirvana, so I hope everyone finds the nirvana through these lectures about Aurobindo's philosophy. So thank you very much, sir, for your wonderful talk. So now we will move to the next session. It's a question answer session. So based on the speech or lecture delivered by our Reverend Speaker Dr. Bimlesh Kumar Singh, I would like to welcome all the participants. If they have any queries, questions, comments, anything related to today's lecture, I would welcome them. to present themselves and ask questions from our speaker of today's.
Uh, Jay, I would just like to take a few seconds
Yes,
with
sir.
your
Sure, sir.
permission.
Sure, sir.
In this lecture, one of my dear colleagues from Sonipat, Dr. Rajiv Kumar, Associate Professor of English, has joined. So I welcome you, sir, on behalf of a scholarly chronicle. Uh, platform, and it is really nice to see you being part of this talk today. Thank you.
Yeah, sir. From yeah, on behalf of all the organizing members of the Scholarly Chronicle, I would also like to welcome the sir. So it was a great pleasure to have you on our platform. So thank you so much, sir, for joining us today. So the participants, one by one, you can ask your question by unmuting yourself. So yeah, please come forward.
Yeah, unmute your mic, and because I will be happy to see the faces of some of my students who are not physically with us. So please unmute and camera and mic both. Sorupan and Chatterjee just is smiling from Kolkata.
Sir, how are you, sir?
I am good. This is not time for personal discussion. Here time is very important for interaction.
Okay.
So before anyone asks a question, I would like to ask the first question for today's. So, as you have talked about, or we read the Aurobindo, we find a kind of inspiration from the ancient philosophy and ancient culture and traditions of India, which has inspired Aurobindo and which has kind of made the dream of India he wanted to make. So, in the present time, when modernity has superseded or modern technology, science has superseded the human psychology or consciousness, how will you say that how will the human or in context of India, how will an individual overcome that psychology of technology and materialism and include the get inspirations from the ancient Indian tradition, or we call the Bharata tradition? So how can we kind of amalgamate both this modernity and Indian tradition and culture?
Yeah, thank you. Actually, I left to discuss some part because you know that within limited time it is not possible to discuss everything. But Jay has asked very relevant question, and I remember some of my observations. Thank you. Actually, if you talk about Aurobindo's vision of India, so he always talked about the all-round and multifaceted development of India, and he did not say anything against the Western materialism. Like Bankim Chandra, Aurobindo also wanted to bring about materialism and spiritualism together, and that way Aurobindo was not a kind of conservative person. He was a well-read person. Like Raja Ram Mohan Rai, he also studied English, and he wrote all his books into English language. uh, Number two, he was not against science or materialism. So he always, just excuse me, Aurobindo was always talking about synthesis. And in this synthesis, we not only talk about the different layers of a consciousness. In his synthesis, there is a synthesis of materialism and spiritualism both. If you remember, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, the great missile man, the former president, and through this platform, I call upon all the erudite audience to read the books, The Wings of Fire, The Ignited Minds, and Vision of India 2020 by APJ Abdul Kalam. So, uh, Kalam, when he went to deliver lecture at Hyderabad IIT, during interaction with one of their students, a student, when APJ Abdul Kalam asked the student, "What is your goal of life?" The student answered, "I want to live in a developed India." This kind of observation from a student, it just transformed APJ Abdul Kalam. And when he came back, he said, a country whose a small child talks about living in developed India. So, what is the way out? So, in Vision of India 2020, APJ Abdul Kalam talked about India's rising status, and he said the way scientific development is taking place, the way human resource development is taking place, the way the all-round development of India is taking place, along with science and technology, the day is not far off when India will be beacon light for the world in the domain of spiritualism. So in Aurobindo's vision of India, you have seen how on the day of India's freedom struggle, Aurobindo had five dreams. In one dream, he talks about world unity, freedom, and Akhand Bharat. So there is no conflict between science and philosophy in Aurobindo. And even today, this is my conviction. If you remember, Aurobindo and a great philosopher like Dindayal Upadhyay, or great poet like Wordsworth Blake, and even Chayawadi Kavi of India, Sumitra Nandan Pant Nirala, and even Ramdhari Singh Dinkar, the great poet. So, what do you find? They do not talk about division or conflict or analysis of religion and science. They talk about synthesis. Even Vivekananda, the great philosopher, a great mystic, he was not against science and physical world and physical reality. So my point is, Aurobindo didn't say anything against the synthesis of science, religion, materialism, and spiritualism. What is important is the so-called politicians of today, they want to create a kind of division. Otherwise, if we want to develop India in true sense of the term, we cannot develop without science. And where is science enemy of humanity? If you remember Einstein, Einstein also believed in God, and he said science is the ultimate liberation of mankind. APJ Abdul Kalam, with him, science and religion and philosophy, they were intertwined. So there was no conflict. So the conflict is not with Aurobindo even today. From the message of Aurobindo, the politicians of today, the citizens of today must rethink, must reconsider, and must try to revive ourselves and our consciousness and our faith. And what is important is let us use science for the betterment of mankind. Let us not use science to create some weapon that will destroy mankind. And if we create weapon like dynamite to just demolish mountains in order to create way to different countries, this is good. But science, why science is used for destruction? Aurobindo never talked about destruction. The ambitious politician, that the great insane king of North Korea, he talks about demolishing the world in no time. So, in today's context, if we just remember Aurobindo or Vivekananda or the great philosophers, they have never talked about the division or conflict between science and religion and metaphysics. And for a complete life, division can't do what is important. We are scholars. Today we are talking about multidisciplinarity and interdisciplinarity. And here, discourse has become multifaceted. Now there is no monological discussion. There is no singularity. There is, diversity. in the approach, in the perspective. So now, in today's time, Aurobindo is very relevant, and we can sort out the issues and challenge of today's time if we really understand what Aurobindo meant. If we don't understand, and if we distort Aurobindo for our selfish motive, Aurobindo is not guilty of this. Rather, we are at fault. So we should study Aurobindo in a proper way, and we should try to extract the best, the constructive, the illuminating ideas of Aurobindo to make this world a better place to live. That is important, and that is the demand of the time also. Right? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, sir, for your kind response. Sonali Kumari, you have raised your hands. Do you like to ask questions? Sonali Kumari,
Not
are you there?
question. Okay, not
Hello,
question.
Sonali. Good evening.
Say Guru Ji say naman hai. And sir, thank you so much for such anything and dense lecture. It just makes me nostalgic about BS third year classes, and where I always used to ponder over that why times always being, I mean times being chariot always being hurrying. Why in your class only? So it makes me nostalgic. So I just wanted, not as a question, but before attending this lecture, I was reading A.K. Ramanujan's Is There an Indian Way of Thinking? So I was just pondering over that, okay, is there an Indian way of thinking, or is there diverse or multiplicities of Indian way of thinking? But after attending this session, I just got my answer. As you said that India is not a land of history, but mystery, or India is a nation of the combination of bhakti and shakti. So it's like get back my answer. So thank you so much, sir, and speaking for a break.
Actually, Sonali, you know that beauty lies in beholder's eye, and India has been looked upon by different people and philosophers from different perspective. Uh, I know that I still question why Muhammad Iqbal was not given due honor by the Indians of that time. And when he wrote the book Sare Jahan Se Acha Hindustan Hamara, why it was not declared as a national song or national anthem. So again, I am apprehensive about some observations like uh, the Britishers who wrote preface to the great works. They were nominated for Nobel Prize. For example, if you remember, had W. Beats not written preface to Gitanjali, I still wonder or fear if that book would be recommended and won Nobel Prize. So my point is, when we are talking about diasporic writers of today who are settled abroad, so uh, A.K. Ramanujan and many writers of India, for example, if you remember V.S. Naipaul, Salman Rushdie, the point is when we are living abroad, this is a kind of settlement issue. When we have got a green pasture abroad, we have got to stay there. What is important is whatever part of globe we are living, it is not important. The important thing is how we are living. This is important. I know so many writers, friend of mine, who are living abroad, and they are just confused about their being basically Indians, and they, instead of talking high about India, they just suffer from a kind of complex. I tell you one thing. I'm just trying to make you convinced about my response to your question. I'm not answering your question, in fact. I remember one of the scholar in international conference, OP Jindal Global University, Sonipat, where I would like to invite all of you in December. So there was an Indian writer who wrote a novel, Rani, and this Rani novel, it was written about Lakshmi Bai. And in the end of this novel, what she did, she just made Lakshmi Bai marry a British soldier. So when we heard her lecture, her book review, and discussion on her book, actually, naturally, people like me they stood up and asked questioning. We asked, "Ma'am, it is fine because in the world of literature there is possibility of making anything happen because poetry makes nothing happen if we remember W.H. Auden." Now she answered, "This is just for aesthetic pleasure." So the point is, it is a writer who have to just rethink over it. For aesthetic pleasure, are we going to compromise with the heritage, with the culture, with the essence of a history, of a cultural entity? That is important. Means fidelity to history is also important part of literature. It is true that when we are trying to just reconstruct or revisit the sources, we have a liberty to just uh, add something, to just magnify it or just exaggerate it. So, a writer like A.K. Ramanujan, their tone, I found A.K. Ramanujan always satirical, always sardonic, and always talking something critical of what Aurobindo has talked about India. The attitude of A.K. Ramanujan, it is not reverential. It is something that is like a highbrow critic who is neither Indian nor American. Rather, he is talking at India from some perspective that is not intimate. That is something different. If you remember poem by A.K. Ramanujan, love poem for wife first. So he talked about his first wife that was Indian. And in different poems, poems after poem, Ramanujan, his tone, his tenor does not have this kind of approach to appreciate India's culture or India's contribution to the world. Rather, he is looking at India from some incredulous perspective. If you remember Litard, what he talks about postmodernism, it is incredulity towards meta narrative. So, A.K. Ramanujan responds to India like a postmodern critic. Although basically he's India, but after migrating from India to America, where he's got permanent citizenship, he's talking about this like right.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, any more?
Thank you for
Anyone?
joining, and I see Jyoti also
Yeah.
seems joined.
Yeah,
Sarupanand
Tapas.
has
Yes,
Sarupanand
sir.
has question.
Good evening, guys.
Yeah, Kumari
Good
Jyoti,
evening.
yeah.
How are you,
Please ask
Jyoti?
your question, yeah.
I'm fine, sir.
Nice to see
It
you.
was like yes, same. I was about to say that after a long time, I I'm able to get in touch with you through this platform. So thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, actually, Tapas, Jay, and Krishna, they should be given credit for this because I also requested them to connect all our previous students, and very soon you will be invited to convocation as alumnus. So be ready to be there. We will never forget our
Yes, sir,
students.
definitely.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
will never miss a chance to meet with you.
yeah, yeah. Be part of it. Yes. Ah, yeah, Jay.
Yeah, any more questions? Yeah, Krishna, Tapas, Prabhat, Sarupanand.
Sir, I have a question, sir.
Yeah, Sarupanand, go ahead.
Sir, don't you think that there is a conflict between the Eurocentric notion of nation by the British cultural historian Raymond Williams
Uh,
or
Pardon,
Sarupanand,
can
you are
you
not
can you
audible.
repeat?
Sarupanand, can you repeat your question, or if you are not audible, then you can type in the chat box. Yeah.
okay. Am I
Yeah,
audible
now you
now?
are audible. Yeah, yeah.
Hello.
Please go
Yeah,
Am
ahead.
I
yeah.
Yeah,
audible
you are
now?
audible.
Am
Yes,
I
go ahead.
audible?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, okay. Sir, my question is, my question is,
Not audible.
You type
Sultan,
your
your voice.
question and
Type your question in the chat box. Your voice is
for
not audible.
Benedict Anderson's as
Sultan, you are not audible. Please type your questions in the chat box. I will answer that question.
are you asking about Benedict Anderson's idea of imagined community? What I partially heard him, he's asking about Benedict Anderson's idea of imagined community.
Yeah, he was querying about the concept of Eurocentric definition of nation and Aurobindo's
Yeah,
concept or Indian concept of nation in relation to, I think, Benedict Anderson's imagined communities.
yeah. Actually, there has been Oriental and Occidental war on the concept of nation, and the concept of nation by Indian philosophers, it has been something that is one of uh, uh, a spiritual or one of those something holistic which connects both past and present, and they just want to uh, present nation as a narrative of total consciousness. And so this is a kind of nation as a kind of consciousness that is important. And that's why Bankim Chandra, Aurobindo, Vivekananda, V.D. Savarkar, and all these philosophers, they have represented India as a kind of nation in the consciousness, in their spiritual consciousness. So Mother India has been defined as synonymous with the uh, Bhakti and Sakti, and it is an amalgamation of different power and different forces. It is not only historical evolution that is India. It has been there since times immemorial, and it has been the land of, it has been the melting pot of races, civilization, and culture also. So, when we talk about Benedict Anderson, we have seen that he talks about imagined community, and he says that uh, in the present day world order, due to diaspora or due to migration or due to global culture, there is a possibility of being uh, part of the imagined community by citizens who have just migrated from their original homelands. So, in fact, Benedict Anderson is talking about a kind of collective consciousness, and this collective consciousness is something that is unconscious. Means whatever part of the globe we are living, but we cannot afford to be, you know, divorced, or we cannot afford to be disconnected from the lands to which we originally belong, through memory, through nostalgia, through some kind of archetypal imagery or something like this. We continue this kind of, trace or this kind of influence. So this is something that is undeniable. So today in post-colonial literature, when we are reading writers like Amitabh Ghosh, reading writers like Vikram Seth, V.S. Nepal, Salman Rushdie, they are also talking about metafiction, although their concept of nation is different, because they are talking about nation as a combination of different parts, and for them nation can never be homogeneous. But at the same time they are also ready to accept the nostalgia, memory, and as a kind of linkage between the present and past that we cannot dismiss. So, however, Rushdie and these writers, they are talking about migration, diaspora, but simultaneously they are also talking about their linkage. That how past and present they are just moving like a cycle, and they are just moving. So dynamism is there, consciousness is there, and Aurobindo also did not define India that is stable or fixed. For Aurobindo, India is also a nation that is always evolving new consciousness every moment, because this consciousness is never going to stop. This is a kind of eternal process, right? So it is, there are two different vision, because in Aurobindo we find the predominance of metaphysics, predominance of yoga, predominance of a kind of some kind of yogic practice. In the other critics, in the other writers, uh, something is different. Means these philosophers, the Western philosophers and poets, we find things have been confined to what is called material, social, environmental issue only. But in Aurobindo, as we find in most of the Indian philosophers, the paradigm or the perspective, it has been more of metaphysics, more of spiritualism, more of integral humanism. Right. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, sir. So there is one more question asked from Prabhat. Yeah, Prabhat, would you like to ask the question by yourself, or should I read from the comment box here?
Uh,
Yeah, go ahead, Prabhat.
Good evening, sir. Sir, my question is regarding Arbindo's concept of supramental level of consciousness. First is, can I relate this with Longinus greatness of thought, or you can say universality of thought? And the second is, if I can relate this with that concept, then according to Longinus, it is more like a natural gift. We cannot get it by practice. So, what are the ways to achieve this supplemental level of consciousness according to our window? Thank you, sir.
Yeah, Prabhat, thank you very much that you are extrovert today and you are asking question, and a very good question you are asking, that you always do. So when we read Aurobindo is not only a poet or philosopher, like a theoretician. Aurobindo also tells us about art of living, and his ashrama. Uh, it is like a process. Aurobindo has guided us how to imbibe a spiritual yogic practice, and where he talks about different layers of consciousness. Now, if you remember Nietzsche or George Bernard Shaw, they talk about Superman. And they said that Superman is the soul. Uh, Emerson also talked about over soul. So, this Superman or over soul is enlightened soul who is able to transcend the barriers, and they are able to feel part of the great cosmos. And if you read Aurobindo, in Aurobindo's different layers and levels of consciousness, he talks about a spiritual practice. And for this, you have to just join the spiritual practice as propounded by Aurobindo. And when you visit ashram, Pondicherry ashram, you must get some class also, I tell you. But in theory, if you read synthesis of yoga and life divine or Savitri. You know, although Aurobindo is talking about poem and epic, but Aurobindo is trying to invoke and enlighten the humanity about the spiritual meditation of India. You remember Savitri. Savitri does not and is not able to bring Satyavan back only by a kind of penance or a kind of prayer. Savitri also, you know, she observes a spiritual practice, a kind of meditation, as Aurobindo talks about. So, what is important is what even Wordsworth, if you remember his poem, Tinternabbe, in Tinternabbe, Wordsworth is giving us a different process that how in the beginning I was just having sensual pleasure, boys pleasure of Tinternabbe. After some time, this were internalized. After that, this internalization made me a living soul, and out of living soul, I was able to feel that I have felt a great presence, which dwelling is the light of setting sun and rising sun. Similarly, Aurobindo says this process begins from intuitive mind, it moves towards over mind, and finally it leads us to supramental consciousness. So, you know, a spiritual practice, intuition, over mind means greater consciousness. So, actually, without dying, you cannot see heaven or hell. Similarly, without undergoing the spiritual practice, what Aurobindo tells us, I am not able to make you feel. I am like you, simply a student. I have collected the information from Aurobindo's works and data. But one thing is sure, if you read his poem and if you read the poem of Gitanjali lyrics, you find Aurobindo is writing like an enlightened soul. He's not writing like a theoretician. Rather, he's writing like a visionary, as William Blake has written. So, his poems are not only, you know, poems of food for aesthetics. His poems will definitely give you food for spiritual meditation, food for wisdom, food for illumination also. Right.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, sir. One more question has been asked in the chat box from Matrey Arane. Sir, the question, participant has been asking about the idea of nation from the left thinking. What is the idea of nation by the left thinking coterie, and how it has been in the pre-independence time? How left idea of Bharat has changed after independence? Is there a difference between their ideas before independence and after independence? So that's the question.
Actually, there is complete difference of perspective in the uh, leftist concept of nation and what philosopher like Aurobindo, Vivekananda, Savarkar, and the French historian Renan have talked about. Because the leftist philosopher, they do not believe in a kind of what is called consciousness, or what is called inner world or inner consciousness. They believe in material and historical process of nation, number one. And from leftist, we have another variant like if you remember writer like Partha Chatterjee and other writers who have talked about fragments and nation. So the point is, when we are looking at this perspective, uh, of course, they are right because they say that history or nation was not interpreted from the perspective of the marginalized or Dalits or the peasants or farmers also. But the point is, when we look at nation, and especially when we have read Vivekananda and Aurobindo, we have found that these writers uh, find that nation is a combination of the different communities, and no community can be separated and divorced from the nation as a unit. So, nation as a unit has been considered by Aurobindo and Bankim Chandra and Vivekananda. But for leftist critics and writers, nation has been described as a kind of, it is a kind of slice of history, and it is undergoing a kind of evolution, and they emphasize materialism as a dominant force in the formation of nation. But if we look at Aurobindo and Vivekananda, we find materialism is not only the important force. Rather, apart from materialism, there are forces like spiritualism, metaphysics, religion, and beliefs and faith of people that connect different people of different worship style or pantha to one common heritage. So there is a difference of perspective.
Yeah, thank you, sir. I hope you have got your answers, Matre. Last question for today's session is Akash Pandey there? So Akash Pandey, would you like to ask the
Yeah, he
question
has
or?
also typed his question in box,
Yeah, so should
and
I read the
I have
question from
partially
chat box?
answered his question. Akash wanted to
Yeah,
know about the lesson that we learned from Aurobindo's works. So the
yes,
lesson that I have learned from reading of Aurobindo, because apart from his fragmentary poems and pieces, I have read Savitri and Life Divine in Toto, right? So uh, I just apologize before audience that I did not read complete Aurobindo, as I have read other writers, but I have read the Life Divine and Savitri. So, what I want to tell you, reading Aurobindo gives us a kind of inspiration, a kind of illumination, a kind of ecstasy, a kind of transformative, you know, uh, outlet. That poetry is also a therapy. Poetry is not for aesthetics, but poetry has power to transform the individual into a very good human being also. So, every word of Aurobindo is like mantra. It is like a spiritual, Janet. And this great valuable word of Aurobindo, it is like felt experience of a yogi, of a sage, of a philosopher. So Aurobindo, like Wordsworth, is not only a poet, he is teacher of mankind. And reading Aurobindo gives us insight to get ourselves transformed. And if we read Aurobindo in this spirit, this is my conviction that by the end of our reading, we can be different kind of person, and our perspective towards the world, our attitude towards this society is there is a possibility going to be changed. Thank you.
thank you so much, sir,
So,
for answering
uh,
all the questions. Yeah,
just,
one more question is there.
yeah,
Uh, Satyendra Prajapati has raised a hand.
Yeah,
Okay, Satyendra,
hello. Thank you,
yeah,
sir,
go ahead.
for your
Yeah,
insight for lecture. I'm Satyen from Flu Hyderabad. Uh, thank you. Like, I really enjoyed the session. Some of the your share was really good. I also remember one of the share by Firaq Gorakhpuri when he said, "शर ज़माने हिंद पर अक़वाम आलम के फिराक काफिले बसते गए हिंदुस्तान बनता गया." So that was
Nice.
one of the greatest thing about India that he made comment. He did comment about, and I didn't read actually the fully about Aravindo, but I know some of the instances I've read in my lecture during time at a flu. So I wanted to ask just one question: that what are the fundamental differences between philosophy of Swami Vivekananda and Aurobindo, and is there a fundamental difference between Vivekananda and Aurobindo, or we should read them as a similar, or like a kind of a philosopher as a kind of a yogi, because they were both philosopher and yogi. So I wanted to know at what extent can we categorize them as a philosopher and as yogi. Can you elaborate if you?
Yeah, Sachin, we have noted your question. Due to some technical glitches, I think our speaker has been disconnected. So please wait for a couple of seconds. He will rejoin us, and then he will answer your question. Please bear.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Thank you.
so, and I think that will be the last question for this session because we are already running late. It was scheduled for 8 p.m., but we have exceeded already around 35 minutes for now. So
अच्छा
I hope if you have any questions,
अभी
I
क्या
will try
अटेंड
to
होगा फिर अभी
uh, answer in the next session if sir will join in the next lecture series. So for today's we are done with the question sessions. Uh, for the next
हाँ मैं
session, we
समझ
will wait for a couple of seconds if sir could join us
हो जाएगा सर हो
for
जाएगा वैसे
next session. So before that, I would like to thank you all the participants for bearing with us. So for the
हाँ
next session, before sir join us, uh, okay, due to some technical glitch, I don't think sir
yeah
will
Jay
join us for now.
sir will be
So he
joining
will, yeah, he will join. Will he join?
yeah he'll be joining
Okay, okay. Then we will wait, Krishna. So yeah, we will wait for a couple of seconds more to see if we will get the answer. I think you are all already aware that Scholarly Chronicle organizes lectures series every month in the last week of every month. So I hope in the next lecture will be organized in the month of August, last week of August 2023. So I hope to see all of you who have joined. I was quite delighted to see that this was the highest number we have got in the fourth in the previous in compared to the previous lectures. So I hope we will see you all in the next lecture also. So
uh
it was
well in
quite heartening to see
Jay
you all today.
uh,
Yeah,
in addition I would like to say that
yeah. Go ahead, go ahead.
there are
Yeah.
also backlog lectures like we can conduct those lectures like in this in the first week of month or the last week maybe for this lecture it is the first week as we have conducted but again we'll be having another lecture in the last week of this month so be in touch or we have also one group scholarly chronicle group that is WhatsApp group you can connect with us with that group. So Krishna,
Yeah, you can give the link to join the WhatsApp group
yeah,
in the chat box.
The
Yeah,
link has been shared. Link has been shared in the group.
okay, okay,
and
Or in the
also in
yeah.
the after joining the
I have
group, you are
shared
all welcome
again.
to give suggestions
Mm,
or feedbacks relating to how we should work out or what kind of topics should we uh, able to touch, should we keep going on. So you are all welcome to give your suggestions and feedbacks in the group also. And in the future, we would like to see how it goes. So we will wait for sir if he joins us. I think it will take more time. So,
It's okay,
should
if
we?
it's not. I
Yes.
can post or email.
Yeah, yeah. I will
And
forward your
yeah,
questions to him. I will make sure that he will answer your questions. So
Yes,
if you are,
just I wanted to know the fundamental differences that
yeah, I
that's
got your questions noted
yeah.
down. So I will ask, anyhow, I will ask him whether I have
Okay,
to go
okay.
personally
and
to him. So don't worry, I will answer you, have you
and
answer.
you can directly post the question to our scholarly chronicle email address. So after that we can convey that.
Yeah, you can
Okay.
post it. Otherwise, also I have got your questions, so I will provide you with your answers. Uh, so if sir is, I think,
Yeah, sir has
yeah,
joined.
sir has
Yeah,
come.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Sir,
Satyendra, please go ahead with your question. Sir has joined us.
sir, I was thank you, sir. Sir, I was
Sorry,
asking.
due to some, you know, some carelessness on my part, actually, some issue happened.
Okay, so no issue, sir. Satyendra
Yeah.
has some questions, sir. Please, Satyendra.
Sir, I was asking, are there any fundamental differences between the philosophy of Swami Vivekananda and or Sri Aurobindo? Because they were both yogi and philosophers. So, are there any demarcation? Can we separate them in what point of views through the nationalistic philosophy or be it any spiritual philosophy? So, I just because I haven't read all of them, like all of the works of Vivekananda, and I have read some part of like some part of Life Divine and as well as Savitri, as you have read, and like yogas and this lectures of Swami Vivekananda. So I was just curious.
Thank you, Satyam. I think Satyam or Satyendra.
Satyendra,
Yeah.
sir.
So thank you for your good share because I love the people who recite share shairi and poems. And your question is very pertinent. What I personally experienced while working on Vivekananda in particular and reading Aurobindo in general, actually, uh, there is a very sharp and pointed, distinction. Uh, Aurobindo started his life and he left active politics and he went to Pondicherry ashram and there he lived like a recluse, like a sannyasi, like a spiritual yogi. But if you look at Vivekananda's life and after enlightenment or after getting inner consciousness at Ramakrishna Mission, Dakshineswar, West Bengal, under the guidance of Ramakrishna Paramhansa, Vivekananda did not stop, and after that he didn't go to ashrama and some monastery to live like a recluse, like Sri Aurobindo. Rather, Vivekananda lived like an active philosopher throughout his life. I have never found a philosopher like Vivekananda who is so practical, who is so active, and who is able to just ignite and revolutionize a common man by his practical wisdom. So after enlightenment, he went to America, then he came back, and throughout his life, till the end of his life, Vivekananda visited different parts of India, different parts of the world, and he was just simply trying to educate the people, educate the masses, and he was telling the rulers of the time, the people of the time, that education is the right way. Number one, number two, humanism. He talked about humanism. Vivekananda was such a great philosopher that he did not make philosophy tough and complex and something meant for only scholars. Rather, like Dayananda, Vivekananda brought philosophy, brought Vedas, brought Vedic wisdom to the reach of common people. And if you remember, one Sikh person went to Vivekananda and requested him for Gitopadesh. Vivekananda told him, better you go to ground and play cricket than to listen to my talk on Gita, because Gita is an epic that can be understood by people who are healthy, who are smart, who are electrics. So, in Vivekananda, we find a philosopher that is practical, that is ignited, that is about everyday problem and issue. And Vivekananda's speech, because Aurobindo, whatever Aurobindo did, he did through writing. But Vivekananda, instead of writing, he delivered a speech. And I wonder that his children, his disciple, and his followers would have compiled his preachings into great works that we have today. So Vivekananda delivered a speech, and his speech was so magnetic that if you remember his address at London when he was talking about youths, that give me 100 youths of character and I will change this world in 4 days. From the assembly, a female whose name was Margaret Noble, she came running to the stage and said, "Oh Vivekananda, I don't know who 99 are, but I am one to devote my all to you today." And she left England, and she was one of the belonged to one of the richest family of London. She came to India, and Vivekananda renamed her Bhagni Nivedita. So what I found, Vivekananda, through his philosophy and vision, he connected himself to common masses in the street, in the city, in the society, in the on the road. So Vivekananda was a magician. He was like Lord Krishna. He had magic in his personality and words, and that he practiced in everyday life through his preaching, through his interaction, through his magnanimous and versatile personality. And Aurobindo did it in ashrama through his writings, through his books. So there is a difference. So Vivekananda took philosophy to the world, to the outside people, and he translated his philosophy into everyday action. So philosophy become an active force. It become an inspiration for action and how to solve everyday life. I remember once Vivekananda wrote that because I had opportunity of working with Vivekananda Manch also. So Vivekananda said, first of all, hear and wipe the tears of Daridra Narayan. He talked about educating the poorest of the poor of India. He talked about educating the mass. He talked about uniting the people. And he said only then India's great heritage, India's great tradition, India's greatness can be re-established. So Vivekananda was talking about transformation of Daridra into Daridra Narayan. Means how common people can be enlightened. Whereas if you read Aurobindo, Aurobindo's philosophy is meant for scholars, for poets, for researchers. Because for this you have to read, you have to have knowledge about language, mythology, legends, philosophy also. But if you read Vivekananda, Vivekananda is so simple because Vivekananda, like practical yogi, like everyday yogi, he brought his philosophy to transforming the life of common man. Right. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir. As we are running short of time, so unfortunately we will not be able to take any more questions. So if you have any more queries, you can send us to the details given in the chat box. We will try to answer that to our best efforts. So moving on to the last session, I would like to invite Krishna Kumar, Ph.D. research scholar, Mahatma Gandhi Central University, and member of Scholarly Chronicle to give our official vote of thanks. So Krishna Kumar, yeah.
Thank you, Jay, for giving this opportunity. Am I audible? Actually, sir has already
Yeah.
talked about a
Yeah,
lot
you are
of
audible.
things. Thank you so much, sir. Since it is a formality and we are running short of time, but still I'll do it. Thank you so much for enlightening us, sir. You have enlightened us on Aurobindo and India. with reference to Walt Whitman, Ian Foster, Max Muller's study of Avagyan Sakuntalam, and how he actually got very much excited and he started talking about Avagyan Sakuntalam and its quality with reference to its originality, how India is very rich in terms of spirituality, religious aspect, or any other technical aspects. Also, you have referenced with Savarkar, Lal Bal Pal, and Vivekananda, of course. As you have said, sir, Vivekananda calls India as the nursery of spiritual, philosophical, and saints, philosophical leaders and saints. Also, along with that, since I have noted many things, of course, I'm just enlightening on these few important points that is really important that I noted. Of course, Anandmat, how Anandmat influenced Aurobindo, that he translated it into English. Along with that, also, as you said, sir, Vande Matram, after writing the Vande Matram, people changed themselves to patriotism. Also, sir, you have talked about India is a continent of bhakti and sakti. Also, historical and metaphysical entity lies in Indian continent. Along with that, of course, you very much remarked that jail is a very pious place, be it in religion or in the freedom movement, since many great souls went to jail due to some aspect, due to some reason, but when they came from jail, they were totally transformed, as you name Jawaharlal Nehru, other Jawaharlal Nehru as well, then Aurobindo as well. Aurobindo has also written a lot of works while he was in jail. Of course, you talked about Pondicherry's Aurobindo Ashram. There is one more branch of Aurobindo Society in Siliguri, where my family is residing right now, and it is really a wonderful place. I have been to Aurobindo Society Siliguri, and I couldn't take any lecture, but it was a really wonderful ashram where they have like arranged everything in a way. And as you said, it is not for only one country, only one community, but it is for all, be it Muslim, be it Sikh, be it Isai, be it Hindu, it is for all. Also, you have talked about Aurobindo's five dreams, which are really important everyone to look upon. Also, if the most important thing which I really like that you have talked about, if you want to know India, you must read Vivekananda along with Aurobindo. With this note, thank you so much, sir, for such a lively and extensive lecture. And in this way, I also like to thank Tapas Sarkar, who is the host of uh, Scholarly Chronicle, and Jay is today's moderator. And along with that, I thank all the participants who asked the very relevant questions to the topic. Along with that, all the research scholars and faculties who joined from different institutions. Also, Dr. Rashmi Srivastava ma'am was there. I don't know whether she is right now here or not. Thank you so much. Yes, ma'am is here. Rashmi Srivastava ma'am is here. Thank you so much, ma'am, for being with us for almost like 2 hours. It is going to happen to us very soon. Just 5 or 6 minutes is there. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us in this lecture, and we wish you join us in the next lecture series as well. Thank you so much.
Really, really, thank you, sir. I would like to extend more thanks on behalf of Scholarly Chronicle community, and we are really grateful having you and enlightening us on such great personality like Aravinda. Sir, just I had many questions, but no time is for asking now. So I'll just say a little experience. Like as you said, like one vision that is Akhand Bharat was in Arvinda's dream. So like Akhand Bharat, in the sense, he is talking about cultural consciousness and civilizational consciousness that is beyond border, which is now divided in different nations from the perspective of material conception of a nation. So when I was in Aravinda Ashram in Pondicherry, Auroville, there is Matri Mandir. So I found there that concept, like concept of Akhand Bharat, became concept of Akhand Earth, Akhand Prithvi. Because in that place, in that ashram, I found people of different religion, different nation. They are residing there. They are talking about humanity. So, sir, of course, there is like identity we have that is Indian civilization that is connected, like beyond border, like through Asian continent, but that also extends to other regions through diaspora or migration. So really, it has been a great session with you, sir. And I also like to thank all the participants who have been with us for almost 2 hours. Thank you, sir. Thank you from heart.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank
Yeah.
you, all the
Thank you, sir.
participants.
Thank you all.
Uh,
We will meet in the next lecture series. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
very much.
Yes.
the recorded lecture will be posted on YouTube, Scholarly Chronicles YouTube channel. So those who couldn't be there for entire time, you may join or listen on the YouTube lecture. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you all.